I think Washington Post nailed it. They said the album continues the swaggeringly uncompromising and hopelessly unmarketable mix of Grace Scannion's scratchy guitar, bassist Steve Hanley and drummer Simon Wozencroft's loping thump, and Smith's caustic and cryptic cut up and spit out poetry. Which again, I think that's just one of the best reviews of any album of theirs. It's just spot on.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another installment of the Audiophiles. We are going to dig into a tune today that John is going to offer us up. John, how are you, sir?
Yes, I am. And you?
Also am. That's great. So, what have you got in store for us today, buddy?
So, I've got another tune for you by Manchester's third finest band? Second? First? The Fall.
Ah, okay. This is it Mark Smith? Is that the guy behind this? Okay, yeah.
Mark E. Smith, commonly known as MES.
Okay. All right. And the name of the track this time around?
Lost in Music.
Lost in Music. Okay. Sounds like the name of a YouTube reaction channel or something. I will I'll endeavor to give it a listen and come back and let you know what I think.
Inutile de regarder en arrière, perdu dans la musique, crétin va te faire foutre.
Les monnaies, il sur la table. Il monnaie, sur la table. Sur the palace of access leads to the palace of access. Les monnaies, sur la table. Les monnaies, sur la table. I lost the music. Feel so alive. So la table. I lost the music. Caught in a trap. No looking back. Let my head inside la table. Breakouts refurbishment. My folks in the highway. I heard a voice say, highway leads to the road of access. I lost the music. Caught in a trap. And there's no looking back. I lost the music. I lost the music. I feel so alive.
It's interesting. There's like like two things happening here. There's his vocal delivery and whatever that interesting instrumentation or music is happening that sounds a bit I don't know, like produced or manufactured. And then there's this traditional rhythm section that's happening that, as simple as the beat and the bass are, they're not, reinventing the wheel here or anything, but it's just so good. It drives this song along. That bass just makes you want to like bop your head to the beat. So it's interesting that it's kind of like two halves. They're not disparate, but they're different from one another. But they're working somehow together to create this tune. God, we're already 2 minutes into this thing. Yeah, let's see where it goes.
I quit my 10 to 5. I lost the music. I lost the music.
Okay. I love the phasing guitar and the production choice, like coming in and out of the speakers here. Let's take this back a little bit. Wish he'd bring the guitars up. Like in this part where the guitars are doing sort of that funky, like, chicka, chicka, chicka. I wish that was just brought up a little bit in the mix. I really, really like it. Maybe off headphones, it would sound a bit different. I'm not really sure, but I do enjoy it very much. Actually, I'm coming to realize that I really, really like what the guitars are doing in the song a great deal. Very rhythmic. Interesting. Yeah, interesting song. I really just want to go back and listen to it again and see what a second go around would do. I'm sure it'll require a few listens, especially to like kind of parse through what the production of it all, because some of the parts are really condensed. I wonder if that would be something that would grow on me a little bit. I loved the guitars. I just wish at certain points they were brought a little closer to the ear in the mix. But yeah, this was interesting. The vocal delivery is something that would need to grow on me, I think. It's a little different, a little obscure, but I'm sure that's what the charm is when listening to The Fall. So yeah. Let's get back to John.
You found your way back from the music.
Yes.
Well done, you.
I was quite lost.
I told you those breadcrumbs were a good idea. What did you think?
Oh, this was an interesting tune. There are bits of it that I really, really loved, and there are some choices that were made that I would not have made. But it
wouldn't be a full song if it wasn't like that.
Yeah, exactly. But on the overall, I did like the song a lot. There were so it started off interestingly, right? And it's only the first few seconds, but it's like this portion of the song that when I was first listening to, I had no idea how long it would last until it was over. But it was wrought with like this tension because you have these two very different sounds that are working together for a few seconds. And one is like this like more frenetic sound, and the other one is more of like this like low resonant sound below it. But they're both quite manufactured in nature. And it has almost this like horror movie type.
Sounds like something spinning, like a blade or something.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And there's this and it's kind of like phasing too, like phasing a bit, which is a theme from a production standpoint that's used throughout this song, the sort of phasing mechanism. Um, it cuts out abruptly and it's supplanted with this sort of like voice over a CB receiver type sound, and some very affected guitar chords that were a bit low in the mix, and that is also a recurring theme, if not for me, issue with this song, because I didn't even know how much I liked the guitars until I was like 2/3 of the way through the song because of how goddamn low they were. So they didn't even stand out to me until I like forced myself to like listen. And that's when I realized, oh my God, I love what they're doing. This is awesome. I just wish it was more in the forefront of the production. But there is so enter at this point, enter Smith's interesting almost spoken word delivery that I've kind of come to expect with fall songs. The proper rhythm section joins the fray, and there is this like simple but absolutely infectious beat and rolling bass line that like really commands the listener's attention, or at least this listener's attention. I kind of liked how it created almost like that's the part that hooked me, that got me bobbing my head, that got me, really invested in the song. The guitars are, and here's where I expand on a bit. The guitars, which are a bit low in the mix for my liking, are superb, shifting from funky rhythmic strumming at times to more calculated chord resonance. And I really, really, really enjoyed that. There's almost this swirling manufactured sound in the chorus that couples well with Smith's vocal delivery, but it's kind of like a tale of two parts of that chorus where it's like the voice and that sound and then the rhythm section, and they work together, but they're very different. But I not so much where it's like jarring or anything, but to enough of a point where it's captivating or interesting. There are shades of like almost disco-y like guitar strumming in the tunes that are wildly rhythmic and fun, though again I wish they were more forward in the mix. And the ending is kind of like the beginning, where you have this book ending of like an interesting and a like abrupt nature to it all. And again, a nod of the head to this voice through a speaker receiver that kind of brings it to an end. And I was just much like the street song, which ended abruptly in an abrupt kind of fashion. This too ended in an abrupt kind of fashion for me. But I did enjoy it, though it's clear I've got a little bit of an issue with the production stuff that was going on. But that's probably an artistic thing that they chose to do for a reason. And in their minds, in the minds of many fans of the fall, it was the right choice to make. So far be it from me.
Okay, yeah, a couple of points on that, and then one really big point. Yeah, the beginning and end is quite strange. And I picture this spinning thing. First, I keep thinking it's a saw, but it isn't. But it's almost like this weird, distorted noise you sometimes get when you spin a coin or whatever. And it's that sort of imagery. Because what you're doing is you're then going into an episode or a little slot of the full world, which is really odd and different to the rest of their stuff. And you say the way it starts and finishes really abrupt. The Streets one that we just finished talking about, that stopped weird because it segues into the next track.
I think I even said in my reaction, I think it had to have done that because it's a segue into the next track.
Yeah. And this, I thought, did the same. And I went back and checked the album, and it doesn't. So it's naturally no reason. It's a choice just to be a bit odd, which again, it depends on how sober he was that day, But yeah, the big thing about this song, which I took for granted, to be honest with you, is that you're obviously not familiar with this song. It's really famous. It's by Sister Sledge, Lost in Music, written by Niles Rodgers, and is a disco-y, funky, absolute goddamn classic along the lines of Car Wash and all that. And so for the Fall to do a version of that is something else. And a lot of people would cite this as one of their top 3 cover songs ever because it's that, ping. And that probably helps with your assessment of it if you knew that.
Yeah. Had I been
But,
equipped with that
I mean,
information.
again, it's just probably old enough for it not to, come into your radar. But it's Nile Rodgers, it's like Chic the Freak and all that, it's big. And it's probably, I'd say, apart from We Are Family, is Sister Sledge's biggest song,
Okay.
this and that one. So that kind of then, you get a context of where this song's coming from. And that's where you get all this sort of disco-y and this weird, mix to it. They've actually been not 100% faithful, but they're being more faithful to the song than you would normally expect from before.
Okay.
But there you go. So
it does explain the guitar styling of the song for sure.
Because there was a which is not full at all. But then there's the other stuff over the top. Yeah. So this track is from the album The Infotainment Scam. Their 15th studio album. They weren't even halfway. And it's widely considered the band's most accessible album. Pretty much. And it's definitely the most successful in the UK. It entered the charts at number 9 in the UK album chart. It didn't get any higher than 9, obviously. But and so it's easily the most successful charting album by some distance. So in the ever-rotating staffing of the fall, I'll just run through who happened to be in the band at this time. I mean, there's some really, fairly well-known members. So Marky Smith, vocals, Craig Scanlon, guitars, he was a long-standing member, Steve Hanley, bass, a very long-standing member, whose autobiography I read while I was on holiday in France 4 weeks ago. Brilliant read. Diamond geezer. Simon Wollstonecroft on drums, he that was in Stone Roses before they became famous and in other bands as well. Brilliant. And Dave Bush on keyboards. So on this album, there's also another cover song called I'm Going to Spain. And this is a really obscure song by a chap called Steve Bent. And he performed it on the British talent show New Faces in 1976, which back then would have been the version of, it'll be that version then of, America's Got Talent or Britain's Got Talent. And it would have been at least a third of the whole population of the country watched that show, when it was on. It was big. And that song, the original version of it by Steve Bent from 1976, was included on the World's Worst Record album compiled by the disc jockey Kenny Everett in 1978. So that shows you what a tune it was and why Mark Smith chose it to cover it for his album. His version is not too bad, although his voice sounds hilarious. He's singing in it kind of proper. Anyway, so critical reviews of this album were really positive, and there's a couple of really nice reviews. AllMusic called it a winner and a half and one of the band's most playful yet sharp-edged releases. But I think Washington Post nailed it. They said the album continues the swaggeringly uncompromising and hopelessly unmarketable mix of Grace Scannion's scratchy guitar, bassist Steve Hanley and drummer Simon Wollstonecroft's loping thump, and Smith's caustic and cryptic cut up and spit out poetry, which again, I think that's just one of the best reviews of the full of any album of theirs. It's just spot on. The album was included in the book, 101 albums you must hear before you die. And I like doing this every now and then. And so there it is. You can see it. And it is next to Enter the 36 Chambers, Wu-Tang, and Sheryl Crow, Tuesday Night Music Club, Blur, Modern Rubbish. And then just for fun, on the other side is PJ Harvey's Red and May, which is an exceptionally brilliant album. And then just a page after that, it's The Twat in the Hat with Emergency on Planet Earth. So, on the other side, Björk's Debut, which again is an amazing album as well. And there's even Snoop Dogg, Doggish Style as well, the same year. What a year to be alive.
Good company.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'll go through the lyrics. So I've my notes, and I've gone through a few websites to get bits and pieces from this. So I've put in my notes that this is distorted, almost telephone voice. Be right, it could be CB radio, it could be anything. It's, the voice of the machine, as it were.
Mhm.
So it starts off, inutile de regarder en arriver, perdu dans la musique. Crétin, va te faire foutre. And that's what the thing there is. I'll give you the translation in a second. And then Mr. Smith starts with his franglais, which is this horrible mixture of English and French, and some of it's spot on, some of it is very mangled. So he says le money, which is not French. Il sur la table. Il money, il sur la table. And then it says the palace of excess leads to the palace of access. Hide away. That's what he's saying. He goes, hide away.
Okay.
I'm lost in music. Feel so alive. Hide away. Sur la table. I'm lost in music. Caught in the trap. No looking back. Le money, il sur le tableau. And then he says, brick house, refurbishments of pubs in the hideaway. And then there's some overlaid ramblings. And he says, palace of access again, something else. And then it's back to the normal lyrics for the original song. I'm lost in music, caught in a trap, and there's no looking back. I'm lost in music. I'm lost in music. Feel so alive. I quit my 10 to 5. I'm lost in music. Now, the original lyrics were, I quit my 9 to 5, but Mr. Smith's a little bit lazy. He likes to get up just an hour later. So, it's funny. So then there's some more sonic shenanigans. I don't know if you noticed on it, but they do that thing which was done in the 90s, where you have that kind of, I like to call it like a muffle filter, where things go slightly muffled in a sort of musical breakdown and then kick back in. But it doesn't kick back fully in this. It stays slightly muffled, which is one of his choices. He does create some interesting sonic landscapes. If you take the music apart, it's the production of it. It can be very interesting, sometimes frustrating, but that's it.
Well, he clearly takes risks when it comes to the production and editing of the song itself before it's made a final product. You can tell, and it's hit or miss. I think personally.
Oh yeah. So I could take you 4 tracks from this album, and they would sound like 4 completely different bands.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, his vocals delivery aside, that's the only clue you would get, and then 2 of them you wouldn't even get that because they are done differently. I mean, one's almost like house music, and they do take so many risks, and because of that, as you rightly say, they are hit or miss. I mean, I love the band, don't get me wrong, but I don't love every track they do.
Mm-hmm.
But God bless them for trying,
Yeah, absolutely.
And they do hit some really weird and interesting points by doing it. So they go back into Lost in Music, Hideaway, Snag, Tabletop, Snag, Dip, refurbishment of pubs. Obviously, his local pub had been done up or something during this, and he's really got to be in his bonnet about it. In the Hideaway, and then I hear a voice say, you're lost in music, no turning back, caught in a trap. You're lost in music. I'm lost in music, caught in a trap, and there's no looking back. I'm lost in music. And then the distorted telephone voice comes back in, and she says it properly, because I think it's a female voice, says, l'argent est sur la table, which is the money is on the table. Pris en piège, which means trapped. Inutile de regarder en arriver. It's useless to look behind you. Perdu dans la musique, which I think most schoolboy French guys will know, actually does mean lost in music. And crétin va te faire foutre, which means moron, fuck you. And then it goes back into I'm lost in music, feel so alive, I quit my 10 to 5, I'm lost in music. That's the lyrics. Now, interesting, because you don't know this, but I mean, the original song does that with lost in music, caught in a trap, no looking back with lost in music. And then it goes into a proper verse where she sings. And I think this is really pertinent to Marky Smith and his life, actually. One of the verses they sing is, have you ever seen some people lose everything? First to go is their mind. Responsibility to me is a tragedy. I'll get a job some other time. And I think that kind of sums up his mentality as well. I mean, it is. I do love this, and it does help if you know the original, obviously. I mean, it does sound very different to normal Fall. And they do a lot of cover songs, but usually the very obscure songs that most people don't know. And this is quite a mainstream one. And they're quite respectful of it, but it really drove, I think, sales of the album. So yeah, bless them, Nile Rodgers and Bernard Edwards wrote this. They knocked out some hits between them, they really did. The Chic and Sister Sledge and others that they're working with. Another interesting thing about this is he uses that weird line at the start, the palace of access leads to the palace of access. Now, William Blake, we've mentioned before in regards to other things, he one of his works was a book, The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, which is kind of a response to the stuff that's going around at the end of the 18th century, circa 1793. And it contains a section called Proverbs of Hell. And one of the proverbs is, the road of excess leads to the palace of wisdom. And I believe that's what Smith was referencing when he said that. Yeah. With him, it's excess and access. And Blake explains in it that without contraries, which was one of his propositions, without contraries, there is no progression. Attraction and repulsion, reason and energy, love and hate are necessary to human existence. From these contraries spring what the religious call good and evil. Good is the passive that obeys reason. Evil is the active energy. Evil is the active springing from energy. Just interesting, I thought. So I bung that in. Some whacked out visionary from the 18th century. Oh, was a genius, but also was considered mad. In that Marriage of Heaven and Hell, it's Blake who actually coins the phrase "the doors of perception," which then Huxley nicked for him, and then the Doors took for the name of their band. So it's quite cool. But cool. Yeah, I mean, I do love this song. It's the closest the Fall got to a mainstream hit. But the little twists on it, and I'll have to listen to it again. But for me, the guitar stuck out from like note one. I hear them straight away, but that's I'll have to listen to it again to see. Perhaps I'm just so tuned to it, and they just come to me,
Yeah, maybe that's. I don't know. It just felt a little buried in the mix.
Well, you're the one listening to the first time, so
yeah.
I have to sort of take notes of what you say because you've got no background to it apart from your distrust of his vocal displays.
Well, I think also as like illustrated by my backdrop, like I usually gravitate towards the rhythm section of a band anyway, but to me this felt like overt and not just my own bias. But who knows? I could be wrong.
They always have, though. I mean, even when it's like fairly conventional like this, they always have just a fabulous, no matter who the personnel are, a fabulous rhythm section. In every sort of iteration of the film. That's the one thing he always got right. And Steve Hanley's just a brilliant bass player. Self-taught on the job, didn't have a bloody clue when he started. Like a lot of members of the Fall. And they all get really good really quick. Most of them anyway. So he must have some genius within him to create that sort of thing. Brilliant. Well, okay, I'll wrap things up. Thanks so much for giving us a go, Andy.
Thank you for having it.
Next one will be the complete works of Sister Sledge and Nile Rodgers. Do your homework. No, I'm joking. So, folks out there, tell us what you think about this. What do you reckon? I know that some Fall fans, I don't know that many, but some can be a bit sniffy about this song, that it's a bit too mainstream and commercial. And the Fall chose to record it themselves, so I don't think there's any point in being a bit sort of high-handed about it. So let us know what you think. I think it's an absolute brilliant cover version of one of the best ones out there. You guys, let me know what you think. Other thoughts? What do you think of the album as well? I think it's a decent album. It's not the best. It's not top drawer, but it's definitely accessible and some great stuff on there. I love Glam Rack here. It's just hilarious. It's got Gary Glitter beats of it, which Now, knowing what we know now is unfortunate. Yeah. So yeah, tell us what you think. If you like this, hit the like button, obviously. If you haven't subscribed, please do. We'd love to have your support. Every vote counts, as they say in Strictly Come Dancing or something. But no, we'd love to have you on board. So yeah, please do. That being said, thanks again so much for watching, and we'll see all of you on the next episode when we go through the arch window. The next episode of the Audiophiles.
See you later, guys.